Hi there, I'm going to share my weekly wrap up, which this time is not going to include 7 days, but I read 7 books in 4 days, and since it is Sunday and I want to do those on Sunday, I thought I will do it anyway. So let's just get into it before I ramble on and on, before I even get to ramble about the books. Because I have a lot to say about the 7 books I read, because most of them were not that great for me. So let's just get into it. The first book I read in the last few days was The Lying Game by Sarah Shepard, and that is the first book I ever read by Sarah Shepard. The book is about a girl, Emma, who is in foster care and has problems with the foster family she's currently placed with. She learns she has a long-lost twin sister, so she goes off and wants to meet her. The book was very strange to me. It just didn't really work, and I'm not trying to bash the author, the book, or anything about it. I'm really not, but for me it just did not work at all. In this book there was a group of girls, the friends of the long-lost twin sister from Emma, and they ran around and did crazy stuff and stupid stuff and completely overdone pranks, which were just dangerous games really, and it wasn't even a game anymore. It was just dangerous to everybody around them, and there just wasn't anybody who cared that they did that. The teachers just ignored it, even if they did it in front of everybody in school and everybody knew who did it. The police knew about it and didn't care. The parents knew about it and didn't care. Nobody cared that those few girls were going around basically harassing and bullying people to a horrible extent. This book didn't work for me in that aspect, and the other aspect of having twin sisters who basically switch places and nobody notices that the twin that is currently living in your house with your family, the sister, the parents, nobody noticed that person it's not the person that grew up in that house for the last 16 or 17 years. That doesn't work for me as well. So the entire thing did not work for me, and the plot had a huge amount of holes and completely unlogical things happen, and the characters were all completely stupid and overdone and just crazy. This book was just unrealistic and a stupid story, and I will stop talking about it now because I'm talking myself in a frenzy here. So let's just move on to the next book. And the next book I read was The White Tiger by Aravind Adigar. This book is about a man who grows up in poverty in India. He's an Indian servant and he tries to work his way up in society. And this book is kind of written in flashbacks and a letter to a man in a high position in the government, in the Indian government. It's a very strange book. It's kind of a book about a murderer who confesses what he did and how he got to that point, but at the same time it's also more about a person trying to get out of his society status from being a slave and the bottom of the ladder to something better, something higher, something different, something that means something. Just the horrible way he gone about achieving that goal. And it's just, I could not connect with this book at all. The main character was very strange. But it's not just because he's a murderer. I read thrillers and things like that were from a perspective of somebody that killed people, and I could connect to those people. This book wasn't bad in any way. I'm not saying it wasn't bad, I'm just saying it wasn't great for me. The writing was easy to get through, the story was okay, the plot was pretty well done, not completely how I enjoy my books, but overall it was a good book. It was just very strange and different and just not to my personal taste. Next book I finished, and that was The Lifeless by Nori Nelson Spielman. This is about a daughter whose mother passed away, leaving behind a list of things the daughter has to complete to get her inheritance. And this book is overall very cute. The list is something that the daughter wrote when she was younger, and with life goals like have a baby or two, fall in love, or go on a big stage and perform something live. So it's stuff that children think about and find wonderful and want to achieve in their life. And it's kind of cute that a mother wants her child to complete the things. I just found it very unrealistic that the mother expects her daughter to basically stop her life after somebody that you really loved. And the mother and the daughter in this book were portrayed as basically best friends. They did a lot together, they really liked each other, so losing somebody like that is really, really hard. And you can easily lose a year without really noticing that year has passed, even just getting through each day. So having a list that you have to complete in 1 year, that didn't really completely work with me, but the rest was very cute. It was very easy read. It was exactly what I needed to have after 2 books that really just didn't work for me. So really loved the family in this, the brothers and the stepsister and everybody. They really work together and try to get through it and help each other out, and they support each other. And this is one of those books that handles the topic of a loved one dying very well. So if you want to read one of those books, I really recommend picking this up. And after that book, I kind of thought, why not try something that I really enjoyed as a child? And I really enjoyed Kai Meyer books as a child growing up. So I thought, why not try Die Seiten der Welt, which I would translate to The Pages of the World, but there is no English title as of yet. This is a book about there's a girl who is on her country estate, and they have an endless library of books, and she has to find her soul book in that library. It's a fantasy book, so there is magic and strange things and creatures that don't really exist and stuff like that. But we follow Furia and a few other characters, and I didn't care about any of them. The writing was just it was okay, but it wasn't great. The entire story, I didn't care if somebody died or lived, which is just not really that is not what normally happens with books. Even if this is the second book in one wrap up that happened, but I just didn't care about anybody in this book, and that makes it really hard. I also felt like this book had a lot of moments where they were just going from one place to another and then changing locations again, and there was a lot of running around and nothing much happened. And yeah, this was not the best book for me, sadly. Let's just move on. Luckily, the next book really worked for me, and that was A Burial Rites by Hannah Kant, which I sped through this thing. This is an historical fiction which follows a real story, and it takes place in northern Iceland in 1829, where the last woman is supposed to be put to death for murdering her lover, and the family is forced to take her in, and the priest has to go absolve her, and stuff like that is happening in this book. It's a very interesting and different book. It has a very unique vibe. It is beautifully written. It's very brutal in the way some things are described, but at the same time it's such a wonderfully told story, and different and slightly strange, because some of the characters are very strange, to me at least they were, and it's a very different setting as well. You really get a feel of Iceland I don't know anything about. I never really read anything about it before, so this was just really a very different book. I completely understand the hype about this. It was a very gripping but slightly strange book, but the writing was just, it really sucked you in and kept you going until the very end of the book. I loved this book, and this was wonderful, and really recommend everybody to read this. And then I picked up and finished The Three Musketeers by Alexandre Dumas, which I wanted to read last month, but didn't really get to it. I started and read up until to page 12, and then I put it aside and never picked it up again. So I restarted and read this book this week. And this is a book about musketeers in France, were kind of the guard of the king and all of that, and this book is about some of those musketeers and the stuff they get into. Let's just say it like this. There is a lot of stuff going on in this book and a lot of action, and it is a good book. I think when I reread it in the future, I will really enjoy it more than I did this time, because I think I kind of forced myself to read it because I wanted to give it back to the library. And so I set myself down and read through this book, and some parts of it were kind of boring. This is a pretty thick book. It is almost 700 pages, but I wasn't really in the right mindset for it, I think, because I felt like it kind of dragged a bit. The characters tended to ramble and chatter and chatter and chatter about the same thing over and over and over, and never moved on and actually did something until they actually just finally did something, and then an action scene happened, and that was fantastic, but then it stopped, and all of a sudden they were back to rambling on, which is something I'm currently doing. The writing was great, the translation I read was fantastic, and the story itself was very interesting. For right now, I just thought it was a bit boring and too long, and it would have been much better if it was at least 300 pages shorter. But I expected more action. It was good, but not necessarily great. And then lastly, finally, I read Das Labyrinth der träumenden Bücher, or The Labyrinth of the Dreaming Books by Walter Morris. And this is the sequel to all-time favorite books, The City of the Dreaming Books. This book takes place 200 years later with the same main character. It is this dragon featured on here, so it's okay to have something happen 200 years later, and he goes back to the City of the Dreaming Books. In this book, there was it was just a very disappointing book to me, and not even one that was just a bit of a disappointment. This was a huge disappointment to me, and I loved the first book, but this book, basically nothing happened. On over 400 pages, there was a lot of talk about puppets and puppet shows, and I'm not a fan about puppets or puppet shows. Never was. I kind of find them very creepy. So reading a book about puppets, if you go in expecting a book about books, just does not work, at least for me. And not just that, but after you finish the last page of this book, you get a note from the author saying that this is the first part. The next 1 or 2 parts will follow in the future. But there is not even a publishing date or a cover or anything for the next book. And this book kind of left in the middle of the story. It just cuts off in a way. It's so sad if authors don't know when to stop. Let's just say it like this, because Walter Morris should just have stopped with the City of the Dreaming Books, left that story and let it rest where it was. It was so much better before I read this book, which is kind of strange because the City of the Dreaming Books didn't change simply because the Labyrinth of the Dreaming Books was horrible. I might change my mind if I read the next sequel, but I'm not even sure if I'm going to pick that up. I didn't have any idea that this was the first part of something more and that you really stop in the middle of the story. So yeah, this book is not something I recommend. I really do recommend City of the Dreaming Books, but just leave it at that. Those were all the books I read. If you like these types of videos, please let me know either with a comment or with a thumbs up. I would really love that if you did that. I would love it if you let me know what you're currently reading or what you read in the last week, and I hope to see you in my next video. Bye!